I'm Dara Dietz, and today I want to talk a little bit about bowel cleansing. This is a subject that comes up constantly with any program, any time that there is something going on in the body. You need to make sure that the bowels are open and working well. The bowels are the biggest eliminative organ in the body. It doesn't do any good to put in good nutrients, good nutrition, do a good food program if the bowels are not open to allow the waste to get out. Anytime that you are eating a good food program, you are providing alkalinity into the body, and the alkaline is just going to permit the body to cut waste loose and move toxins out, to clear waste from the body, the tissues, wherever. If the bowels are not open, if they're backed up, you're just going to reabsorb all that toxicity and basically feel like you've been run over by a Mack truck. When the waste is reabsorbed, you get toxic symptoms and you start feeling the toxicity. So let's discuss what we need to do to get the bowels open and working well. First off, of course, cut out your processed food. Processed food is just going to stop you up. It is going to be like glue inside of you, preventing anything from getting through. One of the worst offenders, of course, is cheese. Most people realize this. Dairy products, cheese, that. It's just toxic, and it creates mucus, and it just balls everything up inside of you. All right. What do we do to make sure our bowels are moving well? And first off, I guess the first question we should answer is, how do you know if your bowels are moving well or not? What is that? What does it look like? What does it feel like to have well-functioning bowels? All we know is our own body. I mean, we are never inside anyone else. We don't know what a healthy bowel function is aside from ourselves and from knowing that we feel okay. All right, the way God intended us to function, and this is the best that I believe we have out there, is to understand how we were intended to function and then see how the bowels fit in with that. Okay, when you chew and swallow food, you initiate the peristalsis. And that's that squeezing, kneading motion that moves the waste through your body. So when you chew and swallow food, when you're eating a meal, you initiate the peristalsis, and the meal that you're eating goes to your stomach and then into your small intestine. The meal from before that was resting in your small intestine, being absorbed and utilized, is now being moved into your colon. And the meal that was resting in your colon is now going to be eliminated within an hour or so of when you eat. This is in a perfectly functioning body. Most of us do not function that well. So what we need to understand then is that we should be having between 3 and 5 bowel movements a day, depending on how often you eat, how many meals a day that you consume, and how well your bowel is working. For each major meal that you eat, you should have a bowel movement within an hour or so of eating. And you should have one in the morning. The one in the morning comes from your liver dumping through the night. The liver will fill up the colon overnight with its dump and waste. It does its work through the night. That is going to seep in through the hepatic duct into the liver and be there available for elimination when you first get up in the morning. So the morning bowel movement plus a bowel movement after every major meal. And personally, in the morning, I'm usually on the toilet a couple of times because it takes a couple of passes for the bowels to completely empty, all of the bowel to process over and be eliminated out. So those couple of bowel movements that you may have in the morning are actually one. You're just clearing your colon out from the overnight activity. All right, when your bowels are not functioning well, when they're backed up, and you're not getting the waste out, what can you do? If you use suppositories, you are just slicking it up. You may get waste out. Enemas can clear out the waste, and for medicinal purposes, an enema is actually very good for getting you cleaned out so that you're not dribbling throughout the day, especially when you're doing a detox program. Get that colon cleared out with a good enema, and then you're ready to go on about your day, and you won't be back on the toilet every 5 minutes feeling like you need to do something else. You just get the waste out. But in a normal day, a normal life, what we want to see is a bowel movement after every major meal and one in the morning. So if this is not happening, if your bowels are not moving this well, let's look at what we can do and what is naturally available to support the bowel, to rebuild the bowel so that it can actually do its job. We don't want to take over the function of the bowel like suppositories would. Suppositories just go up, grease everything up, and just cause it to slip out. So gravity is working, the peristalsis, that muscular tone, is not being developed. It is not being strengthened when you use suppositories and things along this line. Castor oil inside, which is using those items, does not strengthen. It can actually debilitate the bowel because the bowel is not being asked to function. It's not doing its job. So it is not strengthening, and the muscular tone is not being used, which is not good. Now, in nature, we have herbs that the Lord has given us that work in conjunction with the bowel. These do not cause you to have massive bowel movements all throughout the day or uncontrolled bowel movements. They work with the normal function of the body so that when you chew and swallow, when the peristalsis kicks in and that squeezing, kneading motion begins to take place, it will be stronger. It causes the peristalsis to be more effective. This is the formula, the herb combination in the lower bowel formula number 1. This formula will support the movement of the bowels, the peristaltic movement. This causes that to be stronger. The way that this formula is used, we need to know how much each individual needs to have regular normal bowel movements. So how do we do it? You take, the first day you take 1 capsule with your dinner meal. Just 1. The second day at dinner time you take 2 capsules. The third day you take 3. You continue to increase by 1 capsule a day until your bowels are moving effectively and you have found your magic number, the amount of the intestinal number 1 formula that you need for your bowels to work effectively and correctly. The average person, 3 to 5 pills a day. I've seen people who needed in excess of 40 capsules a day to have a bowel movement. Emotional trauma, things like this can actually shut the bowel, and for women, the menses down, stop them. Emotional trauma affects and just tightens up everything and can shut down a body. This is not good, and when emotional trauma has been involved and the bowels have slowed down or stopped functioning, then this will get the peristalsis moving again. And in time, when the body is ready to kick back in, your need for them will come down dramatically. But whatever amount you need to take so that your bowels will move effectively, you cannot overdose on this formula except to end up making yourself crampy and miserable. If that happens, if you overuse, if you take more than you need, the intestinal number 2 formula, a teaspoon of this shaken in water will end that in 5 minutes. It tightens the bowel, it takes care of the griping, the excess peristalsis that has been initiated from using too much of the number 1. So if you are trying to find your number and you find yourself getting too crampy, you overused, you thought, nah, I still needed 1 more, you took it, you woke up in the morning and everything was crampy and you were miserable, take a teaspoon of the intestinal number 2, shake it in water, and just drink that down. And in about 5 minutes or so, it's going to go in there and it's going to conciliate the bowel and stop the cramping and the discomfort. And then that night with dinner, drop a pill. Don't take so many. You found your number, it wasn't that many. All right. The need for the intestinal number 1s can vary. If you get to the end of the day and you feel like you were a little tight that day, take an extra pill. If you get to the end of the day and dinner time comes around and you feel like you were a little bit on the loose side, drop a pill. You know, you are in control, and the body will vary. When you are in a heavy detox mode, when you are doing like a liver flush program or changing your food program to a healthier food program where you're using more fruits, more vegetables, maybe juicing, going on a raw food program, whatever it is that you are doing, if you have changed your food program, it can cause your bowels to tighten up because the waste that is being cut loose and processing through the liver will be heavy. It will almost be like cement sludge in some ways coming into the bowel, and it will be very hard to move. That can tighten the bowel up. You just take an extra pill, an extra number 1, increase when the changes come, and when you no longer need it and your bowels are a little overactive with that amount, drop it. You just use whatever it is that you need to use so that your bowels function right for you. Now, the intestinal number 2 is the actual bowel vacuum. This is the formula that's got the bentonite clay, the charcoal, the apple pectin, the psyllium seed husk and powder, marshmallow root, all that good stuff is in this one. And that goes through from the throat to the rectum and just pulls toxins out of the body. This is the actual bowel vacuum, but you cannot use this formula until your bowels are open and moving well. When they are, when you have found your magic number and your bowels are moving the way that they need to, then you take an extra number 1, and you may need 2 extra number 1s. But you start that night, you take an extra pill, and you start taking this the next morning. 1 teaspoon shaken in water every 3 hours. And this is going to keep the bowel coated with this formula. Now, if you get to the end of the day and your bowels have tightened up, take an extra number 1 and increase them until you're able to get the intestinal number 2 through effectively without being backed up or your bowels being too tight. This formula will tighten the bowels. It does draw out the waste, and it is tightening. It will tighten the bowels up, but just use more of the intestinal number 1s to help it get through. This is excellent for someone with Crohn's disease or when you have diarrhea issues. If your bowels are loose, or you've got food poisoning, or Montezuma's Revenge, the stomach flu, whatever, if your bowels are moving too rapidly, wet, you would use a teaspoon of the intestinal number 2 shaken in water episodally. Each time that you have one of those bowel movements, you would take a dose of this. Normally, within 1 dose, sometimes 2, the situation will be cleared, the bowels have tightened back up, and everything is good again. If you're passing water from your bowels, then, and it's not on purpose, there are some things we do where we want to, like the prune juice flush, things like that, where we're actually working to change out the old lymphatic fluid and cleanse the bowel and all that good stuff. I'm talking when they're liquid and it wasn't intentional. Then you would use a tablespoon of the intestinal number 2. You shake that in like 12 ounces of water, and it can be a rounded tablespoon, and you use that episodally. Each time that you have a wet, watery bowel movement, just poop and water, the intestinal number 2, and usually within 1 or 2 episodes, you will have that. The bowels will tighten back up and the issue will be under control. For the bowel cleansing part of it, for the actual work of bowel cleansing, you will go through an 8-ounce container every week. One 8-ounce container a week is what you would go through, using 1 teaspoon shaken in water every 3 hours, and that's every 3 waking hours. So it comes down to 5 doses a day. The easiest way to remember that is 3, 6, 9, and 12. If you're awake for 3, 6, 9, or 12, take some. And it just keeps you on a good schedule where you will remember, instead of every day trying to think of a new 3-hour period. Just 3, 6, 9, and 12. If you wake up early, start at 6 in the morning. If you're a later riser, start at 9. And just continue this. And if you go off schedule a little bit and you end up 2 hours apart, not a big deal. Just take your dose as soon as you're able, and then go back to your regular hours. This will pull heavy metal issues out. It absorbs the heavy metals. It will absorb the inflammation in the bowel itself. Will take the inflammation out of the bowel wall. It is very healing to the bowel. Excellent healing aid for the bowel itself. So this one is the actual bowel cleansing formula. You use it for the cleansing purposes, and you would stop using it when your bowel was healthy again. So you can do it anywhere from a week to 6, 9 months. When I first started 25 years ago or more, I don't even remember anymore, with the healing programs, I stayed on the intestinal number 2 for 9 months. I had irritable bowel issues. One day I would have the runs, the next day I would be completely constipated. I got on to the number 1s. I needed 13 pills a day to be normal with the intestinal number 1s when I first started out. And I stayed on the intestinal number 2 for 9 months. At the end of that time, my bowels were feeling very healthy. No more cramps, no more diarrhea one day, loose bowels the next. I had normalized and was having healthier movements. The crampy was gone. It was wonderful. But it was 9 months, and it was just like one day I woke up and didn't want to use it anymore. I was done. It was just that little voice in your head that says, you're finished, it's over. And yes, I've used number 2 again since then, but only for like a week at a time, or just basic cleansing program. But never again for the long haul. I haven't felt that I've needed it, and I haven't wanted it. Each person will be different. You have to follow that little inner guide in yourself to know when you've had enough, when it was enough. But the intestinal number 2 is the bowel cleansing. It tightens the bowel. We use it also first aid for diarrhea, vomiting. If you don't know whether you need to bend over or sit down on the toilet, you would use a tablespoon. That's vomiting and diarrhea when everything is hit and your body is just trying to purge it out, get rid of it, whatever direction. A tablespoon of this in 12 ounces of water, you just drink it down. It will most likely come back up, but when it does, it will have absorbed the bacteria and the toxins from the stomach that are causing the stomach to want to purge. Once that's been absorbed, then the tummy will calm down. Then you can go ahead and use your ginger root juice, your peppermint tea, whatever it is that you want to use to settle the tummy. But the tummy's not going to settle as long as it's full of bacteria, and the body says, get this stuff out of here. It wants to purge. Once you've got that absorbed, then the body can settle down, and you'll no longer, and you will be able to stop the episodes. This will also, of course, in that case, tighten up the bowels. Even if you vomit it back up, enough is going to get through where the bowels will normally tighten up pretty good. If you need more, if your bowels are still running really loose after you get the tummy calm, then go ahead and use a teaspoon as needed to tighten the bowels back up and get rid of that part of it. But this is natural healing first aid for vomiting and diarrhea, loose bowels, crampy bowels, whatever is needed. The intestinal number 2 works beautifully. I've always liked the bell tumbler with Tupperware's bell tumbler with a seal as an excellent way to make the intestinal number 2. Add your teaspoon of intestinal number 2 into your cup. And you don't need a whole lot, 6 to 8 ounces of water. There's probably 4 ounces in here. Put it on, you shake it. You cannot stir this stuff, it does not stir, but it does shake really well. Then you just swallow and you drink it. This thickens very quickly, so you will not want to play around with it. You just want to drink it down. It has a very nice peppermint. It's not a bad flavor, but it can be mixed in water or juice. And it is black. You can just rinse it out and get ready for your next dose. Well, this is the basics of bowel cleansing. It is very important that the bowels are open and functioning well for any detoxing program to happen. If the bowels are not moving well, you will just back up the waste, reabsorb it back into your body, and all the work, all the investment that you've done in yourself to clean the body is going to be wasted. So this is the first step in any detoxing program, is to make sure the bowels are open and working well. If you have any questions or there's anything we can help you with, just let me know. My email is mail@healmarketplace.com. You can email me there. You can read more on my blog at daradietz.me.